The only crime that Donald Trump is being prosecuted for is the crime of running for president.
Political persecution at the highest level.
They've quite frankly given up on trying to beat him at the polls. Either going to steal it or stop it by law firm.
A Democrat prosecutor elected on a Get Trump platform.
What's going on here is a disgusting disgrace.
Say what you will about what happened in that Manhattan courtroom this week. I think most people would agree that politics is driving all of it. And certainly the political fallout now needs to be measured. The Trump campaign has put together their first video ad, and take a look.
Thank you for joining us here today. Earlier this afternoon, Donald Trump was arraigned by a Manhattan grand jury on 34 felony counts.
This case is an abomination. You know, it's obviously political. 7 years to try to come up with this case. They're just wrong on the law.
The only crime that Donald Trump is being prosecuted for is the crime of running for president.
Political persecution at the highest level.
They've quite frankly given up on trying to beat him at the polls. Either going to steal it or stop it by law firm.
A Democrat prosecutor elected on a Get Trump platform.
What's going on here is a disgusting disgrace. It is war on Trump, it is war on the Republican Party, and it is a war on the Republic.
This case is the weakest case I've seen in 60 years of teaching, practicing, and writing about criminal law.
I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump.
This judge, I mean, you don't need a prosecutor if you have a judge like this. This judge is not on the level.
It's a terrible case, but the judge has been pretty much a rubber stamp on everything that Bragg has wanted to do.
They're perverting the system of justice. You know, that's where the danger lies. The corruption and subversion of our institutions by the left.
This is the Democrats' entire strategy, to confine President Trump to a dirty criminal courtroom and keep him off the campaign trail where he can bring his winning message to voters across this country.
New York has become a legal banana republic. They are so determined to get Donald Trump.
Look, convicting Donald Trump, that's all they have.
I think they have no cards, and they're depending upon Trump getting convicted.
That Trump train doesn't show any signs of slowing down.
The only verdict that matters is the verdict at the ballot box.
Well, Robert, it's a powerful ad, and it certainly shows that they're not shying away from this. They're not trying to hide this thing in the closet. They're wrapping themselves with it and wearing it proudly. They've made Donald Trump one of the richest people in the country, one of the highest profile people, a TV star and former president. They've turned him into a sympathetic victim in all of this, it appears.
You're right about that, Larry. I mean, what I see happening here is the raw display of power. They have the power to abuse their position. We know that, you know, from the oldest tomes, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I think what they've done is they've turned Donald Trump almost overnight into Nelson Mandela, or to Alexei Navalny. I mean, I watched this all over the world. I was in countries as an assistant secretary of state for Powell where this is exactly what happened. People were thrown in prison for political purposes, trumped up charges, misuse of laws that we had helped them write in many cases earlier on in order to achieve a political end. It is a gross miscarriage, not only of justice, but it is an assault. And I really think Dershowitz was right and Levin is right. It is an assault on the Republic, because we, the average Americans, and I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, I don't care whether you like Donald Trump or you don't, this is an assault on the principles that make us a republic. Without the principles of fair administration of justice, impartial administration of justice, fair interpretation of the laws, due process, and equal protection, we are not any longer a republic. So I consider it a really significant moment, and I think Americans have to get sober for a moment. They need to just stop and say, this is not business as usual. We have to be much more careful about how we allow people to utilize the institutions of the judiciary and of prosecutorial power.
Elaine, there was a quote earlier this week in a political piece that was talking about patent freakout, I think was the word they used in the Biden campaign right now. And Democratic strategists said, if this campaign is about, were you better off during 4 years under Trump versus 3.5 years under Biden, Biden loses that every day of the week. Is there a danger here that the Trump campaign is taking their eye off a really winning message having to do with the economy and jobs and inflation and what is absolutely a slam dunk issue for them.
Well, I think one thing that President Trump did very well for the last 6 weeks sitting in a courtroom was every morning and every afternoon he spoke to the media, and he did, in fact, give us those kinds of messages and talk about the economy in addition to the court case. But he did talk about those messages. I think he will get back to it fairly quickly. He knows that's the winning message. But the Democrats do this at their peril, and I think they'll continue to freak out because every time they have done something to him in the courts, he continues to be propelled. Again, this verdict has shaken Americans across the board because if it can happen to him, it can happen to us. And as powerful as he is and as wealthy as he is, this is still a David versus Goliath case. And what I remembered last night when I heard that his campaign page his donation page had crashed because so many people were donating. I remembered in 2009, a woman at a town hall for Senator Arlen Specter when the Obamacare fight was going on, and she stood up and said, "You have woken a sleeping giant." And I feel like we are there again. And I feel like we will see that in November because people don't like this unfairness.
Let me follow up with that. I think that you're right. But also, the media plays a big part in this. They've been covering this wall to wall. They're probably going to continue covering this. And I wonder if that also puts their thumb on the scale, where if they're talking about this, they're not talking about the border. They're not talking about inflation. They're not talking about job issues. And so the voters are really just getting inundated with Trump saga information, where this whole election, instead of being a referendum on the sitting president, ends up being really about Trump and whether Trump should prevail or not.
Look, I think unless this judge takes him off the campaign trail by putting him in jail, he's going to go out and campaign, and he's going to carry that message to the American people. The reality is inflation is up 20% cumulatively under this president. Energy costs are through the roof. Normal, everyday, ordinary Americans are hurting. Small businesses can't get access to credit. And even though the reports say inflation is up 20%, our small business owners tell us that prices are even higher. Americans feel that. And as much as they're hearing about this case, and they'll continue to hear about this case as the weeks go on, every day that they go fill up their tanks and every day that they go and buy groceries, they're going to be reminded of the economy that continues to hurt them, and they're unable to make ends meet.
Yeah, Robert, the way the media is covering this, I'd love for you to react to that as well, because they're a player in this. They're enjoying all of the ratings and all of the clicks. But in the long run, if they're trying to make Trump look bad, they're actually, as you just saw from the ad from the Trump campaign, they're contributing to the narrative that everyone's against Trump. It's Trump against the world.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll ever reel the mainstream media back in again, at least not in the current moment. So I have very little faith in them. I also agree with Elaine that really the economy is the governing, that was up until now the primary governing issue. And most Americans, I would say a decisive majority, have little faith in Biden, and for all kinds of reasons, and understand the distinction between Biden's economy and Trump's economy. And that will be decisive. I mean, I'm up here in Maine and people are struggling, just as Elaine says, just to get by, just to be able to pay food. Unaffordable housing is out of control. Many of the, I work with seniors and young people are suffering from unaffordable housing, and really their pensions are going away if they're on a fixed income. But I'm going to tell you that I really think we are witnessing here a layered campaign. What suddenly happened just in this last few days is that we have moved now to a point where election interference, as well as the idea that we could be targeted the way Trump was targeted by an abusive government, has become possibly the primary issue for Americans. And that's going to turn Democrats. You can see independents beginning to shift in his direction. I'm not a pollster. I don't know much about politics in general, but I will tell you that the gut feeling I have is that the economy and issues tied to foreign policy and the border were already heavily tipping for Trump. And now what you see is this overt, desperate, shrill election interference occurring, and it really ticks people off. They really do understand the stakes are high.
If I could just make everybody's head explode for a moment, I'm going to float this out there, and I'll just let you sit and think about it for a moment. We still got 5 months to go until Election Day.